And now I'm talking to Mark Johnson, the Concerned Worldwide Emergency Program Manager in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mark, how's it going? Mark, could you tell me a bit about yourself first, please, and about how you ended up working for Concerned Worldwide in the Congo?
Well, my background is actually in law, and I was working in Dublin for a number of years and decided I wanted a change of career. I ended up volunteering originally in Cameroon with a prisoners' rights project, so it was still kind of connected to my legal experience. And after that, I ended up in Malawi, where I worked on an Access to Justice project, where we were trying to build up the capacity of the Malawi criminal justice system. So while there, I ended up having an opportunity to join Trocra and work with Trocra then. That was primarily development, working with rural farmers. We also had a gender-based violence project and a governance and human rights project. It was quite a broad introduction to development, and we had a small emergency component. So I was in Malawi for about 2.5 years, and an opportunity with Concern came up in Congo to work on the emergency response program, and I decided I would like a change, and so that's when I applied. And so I've been in the DRC since the end of May.
All right. Okay, and on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most challenging, how would you rate the challenge of the job you and Concern have in DRC? And could you tell me what exactly is going on?
Well, I suppose that's your first question. I think we're talking about 8 or 9. Working in North Kivu it's a very challenging environment for a number of different reasons. Probably the most challenging issue is the conflict that is ongoing. That makes it difficult for us to actually reach the people who are in who have the biggest needs. As well as that, the state, it's something of a failed state, I guess. There's no infrastructure at all. To travel 80 kilometers from one of our bases to our previous base, that would take at least 4 hours, and that's on a good day. If it was dry, in the rainy season, you might get stuck and spend the whole day digging the cars out of the mud. So it's extremely challenging from that point of view. The second part of the question was
just like what exactly is going on. I know there's a conflict going on there for a few years now. Like, has the situation changed much in the last year or so? Like,
well,
it has, isn't it?
yeah. Well, the situation it's in a kind of state of constant flux, really. And I think DRC is a massive country. It's the size of Western Europe. My job, because we've got offices in different places in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but I'm based solely in North Kivu, and it's a very small kind of part of the country, but it's also one of the most troubled areas. There's so many different armed groups, and it's hard to keep track of, really. And I've been there just over 7 months, and I'm still trying to get my head around what are the dynamics between the different groups. So the situation is it's not improving. It's not probably at the state of where there was a war at the turn of the century, but and there's been some sort of peace process in the country, but North Kivu just remains in a constant state of conflict, basically.
And is it true to say there's a huge humanitarian crisis there at the moment?
Yeah. So, as a country, DRC is probably one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world at the moment. To give you some figures, there are currently 4.3 million people who are displaced across the country. And of that, 1 million of those are in North Kivu. And North Kivu has a population of just about 5-6 million people. So you're talking about 1 in 5 or 6 person is displaced. So the needs are massive. And like, to give examples, people don't have enough food to eat, despite the fact that in most areas of the Democratic Republic of Congo they've got the perfect climate for growing food, but the people are being displaced so often and they don't have access to land, and that's leading to massive malnutrition. and then there's just like the other needs are included: health, water, sanitation, education. All the basic needs are not being met for the majority of the country.
Yeah, just can you give us those figures again? How many people, are people dying of starvation, or what's the story? Or is there a big threat of that happening? What's the story like?
Well, the figures are that more than 13 million people require humanitarian assistance. And that's 6 million more than at the beginning of 2017. So the situation is worsening.
And could you tell me what you and Concern are doing in the country, and could you tell me what your typical day in DRC would consist of?
Okay, well, in North Kivu, we've an emergency response program, and there's two components to it. The first is the distribution of non-food item kits. So that would include shelter, bedding, blankets, clothes, and then cooking utensils. Because if people don't have those simple items, they have to cook or eat off the ground using banana leaves. It can get cold at night, so they can, they can suffer from being exposed to the elements. So they're kind of really important items for people to have when they are displaced. We also provide cash transfers. So sometimes it's very difficult to always get these items to these areas where the roads are so bad. So where there's a functioning market, it's actually a better solution to give the cash to these people, because their needs will always be different. So that they would then have the decision to use the cash as they wish. And then I mentioned the roads. So the other component is that we have what we call a cash for work scheme, where we work on the roads to repair and rehabilitate certain parts of the road that are impassable, and we pay the local people to work with our team to do this work. And like for instance, we have one road where during the rainy season we weren't able to get our trucks to the people to deliver the assistance, and over the last few months we were working that road, and it's almost complete, and now the trucks are able to pass. So it's vital work for humanitarian assistance to be able to get to these people. And
could you tell me what your typical day in DRC would consist of? You're actually based there most of the time, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's a bit difficult to describe a typical day, but I can kind of divide it into two. I'm based in Goma, which is the main city in North Kivu, and it's quite a big city. It's about 1 million people, and however, our programs are in the field, in the more kind of rural parts and remote. So I would spend about 50% of my time in Goma and 50% in the field locations. So my typical day when I'm in Goma is, I suppose, a lot of the time quite mundane, doing kind of office-based tasks, reports, and looking at our budgets. And I'd also go to meetings, like they're called cluster meetings with other NGOs so that we coordinate our activities. And then in the field, when I go with the team, it depends what activities we have, but I generally be there to kind of supervise and oversee our program team to make sure that the programs are being implemented to the standards we expect at Concern.
And could you tell me what are the funding requirements of what you and Concern and other organisations have in the country or the region you work in? And could you tell me how hopeful or optimistic we should be in you getting this funding?
Well, in terms of funding, I think I can give an example that as a country, to meet the needs that have been identified, $812 million is required. But only 50% of that has been actually obtained. So that gives an example. It's a massive challenge for all NGOs, and Concern is no different. So one of the reasons why I'm talking today is we would appeal to the Irish public to really think about the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm sure that a lot of people would say that they've been hearing about it for years and years, but it doesn't mean that the needs have gone away, and it's actually at a point now where it's getting worse. And so
Yeah. A lot of the women in some parts of DRC have been raped in the conflict there. Are you in concern helping these women? And could you tell me if you know much about the situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not an area that we've specifically worked in, and those cases have been well documented by many other journalists and organisations, and but it's not something that we specifically address. If we do come across a case like that, we would generally refer the women to an organisation that we know in our network that would deal with these issues.
Yeah, that story is really disturbing about the women being raped. You mentioned sanitation. Sanitation is a huge challenge in DRC, isn't it? And indeed in all or most developing countries, isn't it? Sanitation is a huge challenge. Or is it?
Well, yeah, it is. It's a challenge, yeah, absolutely. And
our problem.
Yeah, yeah. Concerning DRC, as I say, we've got different offices around the country. In other parts of the country, we have a water sanitation project, but in North Kivu, we're not actually working on that at the moment. As I mentioned previously, we tried to coordinate with the other NGOs in the region and identify where the gaps are. And at this moment, there are other NGOs working on water sanitation with the communities. So it's not something I personally would have much experience of working on.
You mentioned other organisations there. Do you have any partner organisations that you're working on in DRC?
There's a couple of local partners we would work with, and again, in other offices in the country, concerned are part of a consortium where they work with other international NGOs. Okay,
finally, Mark, to finish up before we maybe talk again, have you a message in summary that you would like to impress on our listeners the most?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to emphasise that the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the, if not the worst, humanitarian crises in the world at the moment. And we don't feel it's getting the attention it deserves. There are other countries which, of course, have massive needs as well that are getting a lot more attention, and it's becoming more and more difficult for us to get funding because of this. The donors and the media attention is elsewhere, but the crisis in the DR Congo is not going anywhere. So I would like to just appeal to listeners to, if they feel the need to be generous, and to provide the phone number, which is 1850-410-510, or if they would like to donate online, they can go to www.concern.net.
Okay, Mark, it's great talking to you. It's very informative interview. I'll be talking to you again. Thanks very much, right?
Thank you.